Um, Hello to our um, uh, sixth lecture in the novel. So, in today's lecture, we're going to finish talking about the animal form. You know, form. And today's presentation is concerning the form, structure, and language in animal form. Okay, so um, we'll have an overview of the form, structure, language, and use of form in animal form. What what does that mean? How did we? What form is it? The form of a novel is a type of a text genre the writer chooses to write in. Animal form has a number of elements to its form and genre. Okay, so Animal Farm could fit into the genre of a fairy story, fable. Once we talked about it and what we introduced its meaning. So fable is a type of a story with animals as characters. It teaches the reader a lesson. Okay, and allegory, we say in previous lectures what the allegories are or what the allegorical story is. It's a story or poem شعر يعني أو قصة which has a hidden usually political meaning عندها معنى مخفي غير الظاهر. Okay, or and satire. What do we mean by a satire? Writing that ridiculous political figures or society. Okay, so on a surface, the novel is very simple, a narrative with a lesson that's suitable for children. If you read it, like it's not that hard. When seeing the narrative as a metaphor, okay, or allegory, the one we just defined, it becomes more complex. The reader needs prior knowledge to appreciate the novel on this level. So, as we said in previous lectures, that this novel is based on Russian Revolution. So, to understand more its hidden meaning, you should have a prior knowledge of Russian revolutions and leaders at that time. Okay. And genre, let's say what the genre, any style or literary form, a fairy story, the idea of token animals and a simple written style or um, okay or so this previous slide and now this main style that has the 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 presentation. So fairy story, the idea of token animals and a simple written style are elements that fit this form. Allegory, we said the farm and the animals are an extended metaphor. The farm represents Russia and its experience of revolution in the 90s. Mr. Jones and the animals represent the Russian leaders and people of that time. So the animal characters and the farm and Mr. Jones each representing figures or leaders during the Russian Revolution in the 90s. So this defines some of the hidden meanings too. So try to think while you're reading your text of a novel, try to think hard and critical. Use your critical thinking to understand the overall view of the novel. And fable is a story that teaches a lesson or moral. تعلمكم يعني درس ديما نتعلم منها درس أو لما نقرأ رواية كل رواية عندها قصة زي ما تعرف. There is a story behind it. So it's good to learn from this. So you see you can you know Orwell uses the actions of animals to teach. Read the lessons about equality, power, corruption, and freedom that we talked about last lecture. Satire. Orwell satirizes the political leaders Russian Russian 90s. The narrator, okay, the novel has a third person or omniscient narrator. We see and know everything that happens and hear the characters' thoughts. We think we can question their thoughts. We can read them in between the lines, or based on the roles in a novel. This gives the reader an overview which allows us to come to our own conclusions about events on a form. So that's how to uh, that what is for the form or the structure and language. That's how we should analyze a form. Okay. Now let's move into our upcoming slide. So let's look at the use of structure in animal form. It's divided into three main sections. So when analyzing the structure of animal form, remember the novel is written in 10 chapters. There are 10 chapters in the novel. It can be divided into three main sections. The narrative is circular, and we'll later get to understand what we mean by circular narration. Okay, Animal Farm follows a simple structure. It's written in 10 chapters that can be divided into three sections. One section is the dream, the rebellion, and Napoleon's regime. Each chapter tells a story in its own right and has an ending. So each chapter has an ending, which makes the story easy to follow. It's easy for you to read. It also allows the reader a chance to reflect about the lessons taught in each chapter. It's good to do critical reading to understand what lessons or what messages is the author is trying to give during offering each chapter. We can see this by looking at the ends of some of the chapters. If you look at the end of each chapter, you realize that, for instance, if we look at chapter 1, let's read it out loud. He sees the gun which always stood in a corner of his bedroom and let fly a charge of number 6, shooting the darkness. The pellet parrots themselves in a wall of a pond, and meeting broke up hurriedly. Everyone fled his own sleeping place. The bird jumped onto the perches. The animals settled down in a straw, and the whole farm was asleep in a moment. End of chapter 1. So after the excitement of old Major's speech that he gave at the end of chapter 1 reminds the reader that Mr. Jones is a tyrant, the owner of the farm. The reader wants to know if the rebellion old Major spoke of will ever happen. So that's how you should interpret each of your ending chapters. Let's look into the chapter number 3. At the end of chapter number 3, the importance of keeping the pigs in good health was all too obvious. So it was agreed without further argument that the milk and the windfall apples and also the main crop of apples when they ripened should be reserved for the pigs alone. At the end of chapter 3, the reader begins to see the cracks in the newly found animal farm. There's a chance to think about the lesson and equality that always trying to teach. The reader wants to read on to see if the pigs make only more unfair changes to the farm. So that's how you should read it. Have a look at the end of each chapter, please. How does all end each chapter or each one? What do you think he's trying to say at the end of each chapter? Try to answer these questions like really while you're reading your novel. How does the reader respond to it? The narration could be described as circular. This means that it ends as it began. So always the narration as it ends as it began, or it ends as it began, with the animals being oppressed by a cruel leader. So they started, they were they were oppressed by human, and the story ends up that the the animals who took control of the farm have done the same with the counterparts animals. So that's how you should analyze the structure. Okay. Um, read and like let's read out loud the end of chapter 10. 12 voices were shouting in anger, and they were all like, no question now, what happened? The faces of the pigs. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which. Please, I'll give you this a question and try to answer it while you're reading the novel. Why did Orwell choose to write Animal Farm as a circular narrative? Try to think of it. This might be an exam question. Okay, so that's the end of so that's the main ideas of use of structure in Animal Farm. Now we're moving into the use. We would start off with use of language in Animal Farm. So, introduction, use of language in Animal Farm. The language Orwell uses in Animal Farm is simple, clear, and accessible. So you won't have a problem reading the novel, okay, on your own. Description and dialogue are kept to a minimum, and Orwell avoids sentimentality. Even the most heart-breaking sections of the text are very direct in style. There is no indirect style in the novel, so it's very clear cut directions to offer the thoughts. He focuses on telling a story, allowing the reader to concentrate on the lessons he wants us to learn. Through the pigs, Orwell shows how rhetoric can be a powerful tool of manipulation. Yeah. So when analyzing the language Orwell uses, you could use this structure. What has Orwell done? Try always to answer these questions. What has Orwell done? How and why has he done it? What effect does it have on a reader? How could the words you have chosen to look at be interpreted differently? Use a quote to back up your point. Avoid explaining what language devices mean. Example, no need to say a simile is a way of comparing one thing to another. So that's how things work. Okay? So evidence and explanation of the language used. We have what, how, why, fact. You should do it that way, like evidence and explanation of language used. For instance, what persuading questions, like you should use persuasive devices. How now, for instance, in the chapter, or the one given the preaching in the novel Napoleon. Now, comrades, what's the nature of this life of ours? He asked him this question, very direct. Why? You think you should ask why? Why did he say so? To make the other animals question their position on a farm, to make them feel emotive, like what's our role on a farm? Why we're here? Why do we live on a farm? Just eat and sleep and that's it, and listen to others, put our heads down? No. Effect. This rhetorical device is used to encourage the animal to repel. He used this to touch their hearts to rebel against mankind. Old Major asks a question and then he provides the animals with the answer he wants. Give him yes, persuading them that he's right. Again, let's look at another example, controlling questions. But how? Controlling questions. Are you certain that this is not something that you have dreamed, comrades? Have any records of such resolution? Why? Squala controls the others by questioning their memories. Affect the rhetorical devices used to make the animals doubt themselves. Orwell shows how rhetoric can be used negatively. What? Repetition. You look at the repetition during a speech. How? What? How? If we ask a question, how? Long live the windmill. Long live the animal farm. You see how repeated actions are. Why they use repetition? Here Napoleon uses repetition to reinforce his message. Look into novel you're reading. It's text. What's the effect of it? What's the effect of repetition? Repeating long live helps emphasize Napoleon's point that he wants Animal Farm to continue forever. Whilst this appears to be positive, here Napoleon uses um, the sentiment to make a scapegoat, an individual irrationally blamed of Snowball. Emotive, again, wet emotive language, a cry of honor bursts from all animals, cry of honor bursts from all animals. How? Why? The scene when Boxer is taken away is very emotive. The fact that the horror in itself, an emotive burst from the animals gives a clear introduction or indication that their fear was so great it almost exploded from within them. Word direct style. Boxer was never seen again. How? Very direct. Why? Orwell uses plain language to describe Boxer's disappearance. Effect in contrast to the emotive language seen above. Orwell uses direct and understood or understated language. This helps to make Boxer's treatment more tragic. The, the boxer, the horse, during a story has been taken away, and they lied that he would get the good um, um, treatment, okay, to be good. Then, in fact, he was slaughtered, okay, or he was killed to death. So, how to analyze language? In order to analyze language, you must choose a section from a text to analyze steps of analyzing language. Select a quote from a text that's relevant to the question and a point you want to make. Consider how the quote reflects correct theme, الفكرة, context. Explore in detail the impact specific words or phrases have upon the reader and evaluate how effective the author's choice of language is. Below is an example section from a novel. In this section, Napoleon is speaking to the farm animals. He blames Snowball for the damage the bad weather has done to the windmill. So let me read it. What has Napoleon said? Comrades, he said quietly, do you know who is responsible for this? Do you know the enemy who has come in the night and overthrown our windmill? Snowball, he roared in a voice of thunder. Snowball has done this thing in sheer malignity, thinking to set back our plans and avenge himself for his expulsion. This traitor has crept here under cover of night and destroyed our work of nearly a year. Question placed. Try to think of this question. Another question that you may have on the exam paper. Analyze the language used in this quotation. How do the pigs use language to control the other animals. Okay, so this one main question, and that's the end of introducing novel chapters. And these, I'm sure, these lectures, while you hear them and try to read the novel again and again, understand the presentations and go and apply them into your reading. Trust me, you like you will get to understand it in a timely manner. Okay, thank you for your listening. um Utilized language, comrades, he said quietly. You know who is blah blah blah. Okay,